Anyway, so we are looking at Sefer Yoshua, but when there is a halachic topic in Sefer Yoshua, so I will elaborate on the halachic topic. That kind of explains why we're talking about something that is very, very far afield from the actual text of Sefer Yoshua, but it's very connected to Sefer Yoshua. And that is, you'll remember, the last particular Maaseh we were looking at was the death of Achan. That Achan was Moal B'Cherem, that Yoshua had declared, and there's a machlokas Rishonim, if this was Al Pi Hashem or Yoshua's own Gezerah, that nobody was allowed to take any of the spoils of Yericho, and Achan took a few things, not that much, and as a result, when the Jewish people fought their next battle at Ai, which was a small city, and it should have been easy to take, and they only sent a fraction of their whole army, they were defeated. And 36 Jews died. Now, again, I mean, every life is precious, but 36 is not a huge military defeat. But still, since in Yoshua's time, this was a time of miracles. I mean, look at how Yericho fell. The wall fell down. The fact that even a small defeat happened to them is a tremendous sign of divine anger. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Achan, Chata Yisrael, the Jewish people have sinned because of the Me'ilah B'Cherem, and lots were drawn. Achan was identified, and Achan was stoned to death after he did tshuva, and all of the property was destroyed, like in Yer Nidachas, like a city of Avodah Zarah. So, Derech Agav, since Hashem said to Yoshua the words Chata Yisrael, the whole Jewish people sinned, so Chazal see this as the first expression after crossing the Yarden of Kol Yisrael Areven Zelozeh, that every Jew is responsible. So Achan did the sin, Gans Klal Yisrael. So, just to tell you where we're going, so we use this as a springboard to talk about the halachic principle of Kol Yisrael Areven Zelozeh. So let me just remind you how this plays out in halacha. We know that normally, in order to be Motzei somebody in a mitzvah like Kiddush, or Megillah, or Shofar, I have to be what is called a mechuyev b'davar. I have to have an obligation, meaning if I'm a katan or I'm a goy, I can't do it. And yet, we have a principle that I could say Kiddush for you over and over and over and over again, even though I was Yotzei. So if I was Yotzei the first time, how can I do Kiddush again? It's a bracha levatala, and I can't be Motzei you because I'm not mechuyev anymore. So Rashi explains in Maseches Rosh Hashanah that this is because of the principle Kol Yisrael Areven Zelozeh. So even though I was Yotzei Kiddush, I can do it again, because if you were not Yotzei Kiddush, I did not completely fulfill my obligation. So I can do it again, and then I can do it again, and then I can do it again. I can do it 1,000 times because of the principle of Kol Yisrael Areven Zelozeh. Meaning to say, Kol Yisrael Areven Zelozeh makes you mechuyev b'davar, meaning the principle is I can only be Motzei you if I'm chayav in a mitzvah. If I'm not chayav in a mitzvah, I cannot be Motzei you. So if that's the case, how could I be Motzei you if I was already Yotzei? The answer is I'm still chayav in the mitzvah because Kol Yisrael Areven Zelozeh. Which means the following, just to be sure you understand analytically how this works. If I'm actually chayav in a mitzvah, meaning I didn't make Kiddush yet, then I don't need the principle of Kol Yisrael Areven Zelozeh. I could be Motzei you even without Arvus, because I am called mechuyev b'davar. Arvus is the backup principle that says that even if I'm technically not mechuyev b'davar, because of Arvus, I'm still chayav and I can. You understand this? In other words, the reason why I can make Kiddush for you if I wasn't Yotzei yet is not exactly the same reason why I can make Kiddush for you if I was Yotzei. If I was not Yotzei yet, so I'm making Kiddush both for me and for you, that's the general principle. Anyone that's chayav in a mitzvah can be Motzei somebody else. If I was Yotzei, however, I'm no longer chayav in the mitzvah, so we need the principle of Kol Yisrael Arevin Zelazeh. Okay, that's how it works. Now, and that allows me to make the bracha over and over and over again. So just to give you an example of how that plays out, I can make Kiddush for you, but the Gemara does say this does not apply to Birkas HaNehenin. Meaning, let's imagine you want to eat or drink something, and you don't know how to make the bracha. Well, you could say it in English. There are different ways out, but can I say shahakol for you? So here the Gemara actually says, I cannot say shahakol for you unless I'm also going to be drinking, and I have to make a shahakol for myself. So if I'm making a shahakol for myself, I can make a shahakol to be motzi you or hamotzi, whatever it is, or hamotzi on Shabbos. Right? It's common that one person makes hamotzi for the table, even though there are other minhagim on that. But if I'm not eating or drinking, or even if I'm eating or drinking, if I already made the bracha, I'm not able to be motzi you, because since eating or drinking is an optional activity, you can't really say, Kol Yisrael Araven, I'm responsible to make a bracha for you, because you only say arvos on a mitzvah that a person has to do. The person doesn't have to eat, even though once he eats, he has to make a bracha, but he doesn't have to eat. So what's interesting is, though, that when the hamotzi is made as part of Kiddush, because remember, you can make Kiddush, the chatchila Kiddush should be made on wine or grape juice, but you can make Kiddush on bread. And if you don't have wine or grape juice, you can make Kiddush on bread. Friday night, how do you make Kiddush on bread? So you wash your hands before Kiddush. You make al netilas yadayim before Kiddush. You sit down. You say vayachulu Friday night, and then you say Baruch Ad Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz on lechem mishnah. Don't eat the bread. Then you say the whole, just like the wine. Then you say the whole bracha Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh HaShabbos, and then you eat the bread. Okay, you can make Kiddush on bread. Maybe you've never seen it. Maybe you've never done it. So the halacha there is, if it's part of Kiddush, I could be motzi you again and again. So even if I ate bread already, even if I'm in the middle of my meal, I could take bread, just like wine, and I can make Kiddush for you, including hamotzi. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. Now, for the third meal, it's not so much of a question, because mi'ikar adin b'di'evet, you can be yotzei with fruit or something. The first two meals do require bread. It's a good question, meaning Chazal seem to have dealt with Birkas Hanenin as a generic category. And since generally Birkas Hanenin, one cannot be motzi unless he's also eating, so they even applied it to the meals of Shabbos, except for the bracha that is part of Kiddush itself, including the hamotzi. By the way, as a little aside, the Rush brings down, and the Shulchan Aruch so paskins, that even though you could make Kiddush on bread Friday night, you cannot make Kiddush on bread Shabbos morning. Now, why is that so? Because here's the thing. The Kiddush of Shabbos morning, Me'ikar Hadin, right, the psukim of Vashamru, the psukim of Zachor, the psukim of Alkain, Beirach, whatever psukim you say, is only a minhag. The real Kiddush of Shabbos morning is simply honoring Shabbos with a special toast, Borei Pri Hagafen. So the Rush argues, if you're going to make Kiddush on bread, so it's not recognizable you're doing anything for Shabbos. You're just sitting down and making hamotzi like you might do in the middle of the week. Bishlam of Friday night, when I make Kiddush on bread, there's still a heker that I'm making Kiddush, because I make the bracha Mekadesh HaShabbos. But Shabbos morning, where I don't make a bracha Mekadesh Shabbos, so the whole Kiddush is like the toast, the honorary cup of wine that you're honoring the Shabbos with. So if all you're going to do is do it on bread, there's no hecker. So that actually means the following. So Friday night, just halacha, if I don't have wine or grape juice, I should make Kiddush on bread. And I should wash, of course, before I make Kiddush. What do I do Shabbos morning if I don't have wine or grape juice? And the halacha is I cannot make Kiddush Shabbos morning on bread. So here we go to a default setting, which is called Chamar Medina. Chamar Medina means any type of drink that is so-called prestigious enough that you might serve to an honored guest. Now, that's called Chamar Medina, and according to some Rishonim, that still has to be alcoholic. So that would mean, that's why you might see people do this. So if you don't make Kiddush on wine or grape juice, you should make it on scotch or bourbon or whiskey, and that would be called Chamar Medina, like you'd honor somebody with a drink. But then you get into a real problem, because the amount of wine that you have to make Kiddush over is a revius. A revius is around 4 fluid ounces, around the size of this cup. And you have to drink most of a revius, so you'd have to drink a majority of this cup. So for some people, it's not a problem, really. But, it's a lot of scotch or vodka or whatever it would be. So some people have a further kula, meaning kula number 1 is to make it on schnapps, whiskey, vodka. Kula number 2 is that they'll make it on a shot glass. Now, that second step is a very, very questionable step, because the halacha normally is that a kais shel bracha always has to be a revius. How do you make it on a shot glass? A shot glass is only around 1.1 fluid ounces. It's 1/4 of a revius. So some want to say that the yesod of a revius is that's the derech, that's the standard size of the drink. So that only applies to wine. For schnapps, the standard size is going to be smaller, so that would allow you pachos revius. But that's kasha ma'id lahater. That's b'emes and very, very difficult. So if you're going to make a kiddush on schnapps, whiskey, vodka, then you really need to have a revius and drink most of the revius. But as I say, it is best, of course, Shabbos morning also to have wine, grape juice. And the one option that's ruled out is bread. You cannot make Kiddush Shabbos morning on bread, even though you could make Kiddush Shabbos morning, Shabbos Friday night on bread, yeah.
Why don't you run into the same problem by whiskey you run into by bread, with it being recognizable?
Because the reason is that if somebody pours themselves a toast, even though they're going to make a shakol on it, that normally suggests a special occasion. Just sitting down and eating bread does not suggest a special occasion, because a regular meal might begin with bread. But a regular meal would normally not begin with a drink. So a drink of vodka is considered to be in honor of Shabbos. And that's why it's valid for Kiddush. Now, the truth is, even Friday night, Chamar Medina is valid for Kiddush Friday night. But again, l'chatchila, one should certainly have wine or grape juice, yeah.
Is there a difference? Is it better to use wine or grape juice, or does it make no difference on Friday night?
So if you could drink either one, wine is better than grape juice. It's more chashuv, but grape juice is good too. Now, for the 4 koshos of Pesach, there is a machlokas, meaning even those who allow grape juice for Kiddush may require some measure of alcohol for the Dalit kosos of Pesach, including the Kiddush kos. That's one of the 4 kosos, because the notion of freedom, letting yourself go, the relaxation of inhibition, which the Dalit kosos connote, could only be achieved by by some type of alcohol. But the truth is, they make wine now. I mean, I'm very, very far from an alcohol drinker. That goes back to traumatic stress suffered in high school on a Purim. And won't go over that. But the thing is that they have now alcoholic wines that are mamish 4%, 3%. It's amazing. So there's a tiny little bit of alcoholic taste, but very, very easy to drink. It's not like the 14% wines that they give. Yeah.
And then if I'm sitting at lunch with somebody, could I be yoitze them to say like the broch on food if they like putting on that I'm saying the broch for them, like, or
You talking about on fruit? What did you say?
on like any food, like,
Yeah. The halacha is yes, meaning to say, I could be Motzei a person in a bracha on food, as long as I also need to make the bracha. Meaning I can't use arvas for that. But if I'm making the bracha, I can make it for them. Now, some say, except on Shabbos, where it's a sudas mitzvah b'dafka, that it's only if the person doesn't know how to make the bracha. If the person knows how to make the bracha, you're not allowed to do it that way. Others say even if they know, you're allowed to make a bracha rishona for them. Okay, so this is the all-important principle of Kol Yisrael HaRav Zelazah. I know that its connection to the story of Achan is a bit tenuous, but Lamaisa, it is connected, because Achan is one of the illustrations of Kol Yisrael HaRav Zelazah. Yeah.
If one was to make Kiddush on Shabbat morning, they would presumably be saying, like, Pasukim, that make it clear that you're making Kiddush. Even though, like, the fact that it's bread wouldn't necessarily make it clear that it's supposed to be.
No, that's correct. That's correct. But the reason is because the psukim are really a minhag, meaning to say the Kiddush is your yotze even without the psukim. In other words, Shabbos morning, if I were to simply pour myself a glass of wine, and all I would say is Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech olam borei pri hagafen. That's all I said. I have been yotze the Kiddush of Shabbos morning. The psukim are minhagim. That's why different people say different, right? As you know, different people say different paragraphs, different things. Yeah.
Once we're already saying the Pasukim, why does it now matter what the actual film is?
No, because I think the concept is that the takana of Chazal is that the kavod Shabbos has to be in the Kiddush, not in some extra ornamentation that you add. I mean, that's you're adding, but that's not in the Kiddush itself. There has to be something in the Kiddush itself that expresses kavod for Shabbos. Yeah.
Can a person from kiruv might say he's talmidim with Brachos HaTorah?
Yeah. So Birchas HaTorah is exactly the same thing. Right, Shavuos morning, other, but even during the year. Even if, number one, if I have to make Birchas HaTorah, I could certainly be Motzei you, because I'm mechoyev b'davar, I could be Motzei you. Shomeya ka'ona, and even if I had made Birchas HaTorah, if you didn't know how to make it, I could make it for you, because Kol Yisrael HaRav Zelazah. So Birchas HaTorah fits in exactly that paradigm. Now, I will say, just as a little aside, there are some Gezeras HaKosovs where you can't be Motzei a person in a mitzvah, even though it's Dibor. I'll give you two examples. One example is Sviras HaOmer. I could be Motzei you in the bracha. In fact, if a person missed a day, you should hear the bracha. But I cannot be Motzei you in the counting. That's a Gezeras HaKosov. It's a drasha, meaning to say, I don't say Shomeya Ka'ona on Sviras HaOmer. On Sviras HaOmer. Now, the basis for that is a drasha in Maseches Menachos, where it says by Sviras HaOmer, Usvartem lochem. You should count. Now, the word lochem is extra. It could have just said Usvartem, you should count. Why does it have to say lochem? So we darshan, Shetehei Svira l'chol echad v'echad, that each person must count. That's a Gezeras HaKosov. The other is very interesting. You don't say Shomea Ka'ina by Birkas Kohanim. So let's imagine that two Kohanim go up, and one doesn't know Hebrew, or one doesn't know the words. So the Kohen might say, okay, I'll be Motzei you, in the words of Birkas Kohanim. So the halacha is that one Kohen cannot be Motzei another Kohen in Birkas Kohanim. So either the Kohen who doesn't know how to do it either leaves before duchening, or whatever, he just follows. He has to say the words, meaning the Kohen that knows the words should say the words slowly enough that the other person could follow along, or write it out on a cue card in English, whatever it is, Yivarech, whatever it would be. But there's no din of Shomeya Ka'ona on Birkas Kohanim. Now, here's a very interesting thing. The Beis HaLevi, again, I'm really digressing, but these are, I think, interesting ideas. The Beis HaLevi gives a svara why it's not Shayach Shomeya Ka'ona, right? He who listens, as if he said, in Birkas Kohanim. Because Birkas Kohanim doesn't only require recitation. Birkas Kohanim requires that it be kol ram, meaning to say, if a Kohen were to say the words the way he davens Shemona Esrei, right, without it being heard by somebody, he would not be Yotzei, and we would not be getting the blessing. There's a Gezeres HaKasav of kol ram. So says the Beis HaLevi, Shomeya Ka'ina. When you listen, it's as if you said it, but you didn't say it out loud. Meaning, Shomeya Ka'ina is not kol ram. It's as if you said it, but you said it silently. So whenever there's a requirement of kol ram, see, by Kiddush, there's no requirement I say it loud. So memela, I could be Motzei you in Kiddush, because Shomeya, you're hearing it with kavanah to be Yotzei. It's as if you said it. You didn't say it out loud. Okay, you don't have to say it out loud. But says the Beis HaLevi, anything that has to be said out loud, it's not Shayach Shomeya Ka'ona. L'maisa, there's a lot of pilpul, a lot of achronim talk about this Beis HaLevi. It's a famous svara. Other people say, well, no. If Shomeya Ka'ona means when I listen to your recitation, it's as if I did it, you did it out loud. Right? That's going to be the question. Is it as if I said it, but I said it silently? Or it's as if I did what you did, and you did it out loud. Right? So you see, that's a whole deal. Now, the Rogatchover Gaon, we talked about the Rogatchover Gaon before, right? Very colorful, super genius gadol. The Rogatchover Gaon was the Rav of Dvinsk, together with Rav Meir Simcha, the Or Sameach. They were mamish, the Rabbanim of Dvinsk. At the same time, the Rogatchover was the Rav of the Hasidic Kehila. He actually was a Chabad person. Although I wouldn't really describe him as a Chabad Chassid so much. He was too independent. But again, Chabad has a Messiah that the last Rebbe got smicha from the Rogatchover, which would have been a big kavod. And Rav Meir Simcha was the Rav of the non-Hasidic community, right? Both of them were two enormous Gedolei Ador. But the Rogatchover was very charif. Rav Meir Simcha used to say, everybody thinks the Rogatchover has such a fantastic memory. He says, he doesn't have such a great memory. He finishes Bavli and Yerushalmi every month. So anything in Bavli and Yerushalmi, he learned within the past month. So he remembers things. The truth is, for us, that already is a good memory. But whatever it is, it says anything he remembers, he saw in the past month. So what's the big deal? So the Rogatchover was that way, mamish, So the Rogatchover says the following: if you look at Mikra Megillah, right, when we read the Megillah, so do you remember this? When we get to the Aseres B'nei Haman, the recitation of the 10 sons of Haman, so we say it. Right? We don't just have the Baal Koreh do it. We say it. Right? We say it. So the question is, why do we say it? I mean, the whole Megillah, we're listening to the Baal Koreh. Shomeya Ka'ona, he's Motzei us. So why do I have to say, or why is the minhag to say the Aseres B'nei Haman? So says the Rogatchover, he doesn't bring the Beis HaLevi. The Rogatchover didn't learn Acharayim ki huzeh, but he was mechabein to the same svara of the Beis HaLevi. The Rogatchover says that since there's a halacha that the one who's reading the Megillah doesn't only recite the Aseres B'nei Haman, but has to recite them in one breath. So just like Shomea Ka'ina is not Kol Ram, Shomea Ka'ina is not B'neshima Achas, meaning it's as if I said it, but if I didn't say the words, I didn't say it in one breath. So since there's a halacha of Neshima Achas, it's not Shayach Shomea Ka'ina Anaseres B'nei Haman. Therefore, I have to say it. Of course, the kasha is, but how could I be Motzei if I didn't read it from a Megillah? That's a kasha in the Rogatchover too. I mean, when I say it, sorry, a lot of people have a Megillah, but many people don't have a Megillah. So, like the Rogatchover's cheshbon, that you have to say it because there's no Shomeya Ka'ina, then why would your saying it help if you're not saying it from a kosher Megillah? Okay, that's a bit of a kasha on the Rogatchover. But this is the famous svara of the Beis Halevi and the Rogatchover, that you don't say Shomea Ka'ina whenever the Amira has other laws besides just saying it. Whether it's Kol Ram or whether it's Neshima Achas, Shomea Ka'ina doesn't carry over. And that also depends, again, analytically, on whether Shomea Ka'ina is as if I did what he did. Because if you learn that way, he did it B'Kol Ram, or whether it's like, it's as if I said it, but I didn't say it B'Kol Ram, and I didn't say it B'Neshima Achas. So many Achrayim debate this. This is one of the classic shailas or chakiras in Shomea Ka'ina. Yeah.
I have another question on the Birkas Menanim.
Yeah.
The same laws applied to a bracha achrona.
Okay. So bracha, okay, that's very, very good. Very good. I'm glad you brought it up. Bracha achrona is absolutely very different than bracha rishona. The general rule of bracha rishona is I cannot be motzi you unless I myself need to make the bracha for myself. And the only exception is the Kiddush and the bracha of wine and hamotzi that you make in Kiddush proper. What about bracha achrona? So interestingly enough, bracha achrona, and this is true whether it's Borei Nefashos, or Al Hamichya, or Birkas Hamazon, or a full benching, one person can be motzi another person, and I could be, let's say I could be motzi a person in benching, even if I didn't even eat. At least if they don't know how to bench themselves. Why? If I ate, I could be motzi you in benching, because I'm mechuyev in benching, I could be motzi you, shomeya kaona. And even if I didn't eat, I could be motzi you in a bracha achrona, because of Kol Yisrael Areven Zel Lazeh. What's the difference between bracha rishona and bracha achrona? Bracha rishona is not considered a mitzvah because the person didn't have to eat in the first place, putting aside your kasha about Shabbos. But once he ate, and now he's mechuyev in bracha achrona becomes like every other mitzvah, shomeya ka'ina, and you could be mitzi. Now, the original form of Zimmun, when you had three people who ate together, right? When you had three people who ate together. So today, Zimmun is just, Rabosai, Milvan Benshin, Rabosai Nevarech, that little thing. But the real Zimmun of the Gemara was that when three people ate together, the mezamein was supposed to be motzi everybody in all of benching. If you would be at a mezumin in the time of the Gemara, even the time of the Rishonim, the pshat would be the mezamein is motzi everybody. That is desirable. The reason why that fell out of vogue, again, it's just shvach, it's because people weren't listening, they weren't mechavein, so therefore it was thought better that everyone should bench on themselves. Now, when you say the following, so really when you read a sentence in the Mishnah, Shaloisha sha'achlu ki echad, chayavin l'zamein, when three people eat a meal together, they are chayav to have zimun. What that actually means is, when three people eat together, Chazal were koveya that one person bench for the whole group. So, when it says, if two people eat together, there is no Zimmun, all that means is there is no kiruv for one person to bench for the other one. But lamaisa, he could still be Motzei. Even if it's just two people. One could be Motzei, the other person, okay? So in the case of three, it's a kiruv. Chazal B'davka wanted one person to be Motzei, so they're a group, they bench as a group. If it's not a Zimmun, so there's no kiruv, but ein achinami, one could be Motzei. And even if you were now in that case you ate, but the MS says even if you, in that case you ate and you didn't bench yet, but even if you didn't eat, or even if you benched already, we would actually say Kol Yisrael, HaRav and Zelazah. So yeah.
If you didn't eat, and the three people did eat bread, could you initiate Zimmun?
So I'll get to that, because with Zimmun there's a bit of a problem, meaning the statement that I said that you could be Motzei somebody even if you didn't eat would not apply to being a Mezamin. And I'll explain why in a moment. Yeah.
Can you do the al-achilas matzah?
Al-achilas matzah? Yes. Now the question, the interesting, in fact, you're 100% correct. With achilas matzah, not only could I be Motzei you with the bracha of al-achilas matzah, I could be Motzei you even with the hamaitzi, because since you can't get to the matzah without the hamaitzi, that would be nechlal. So that would be similar to the hamotzi of Kiddush. You could be Motzei, yeah.
The Rav say that this is only if someone doesn't know how to say bracha, like by al hamechia, if someone knows how to say al hamechia, but they just want me to be Motzei them, is that a problem?
So the MS is certainly you could be Motzei a person even if he knows how to do it. The only thing is lechatchila. If he knows how to do it, it's better for him to do it himself, because mitzvah ba yoser mibishlucha. But you're correct in terms of b'diavad. He's certainly yotzei, even if he knows how to do it. Yeah.
So, if someone initially forgets to say the before blessing before eating, now, right, the halacha is that now that he ate, b'diavad is still obligated to say the before blessing. And now that he ate, and now is obligated, therefore, can you now yotzei him?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, but once again, he's only obligated because of the new food he's going to eat. He's not obligated because of the old food, meaning to say, even though he should have made a bracha on that old food, once he ate it, he cannot make a bracha on that old food anymore. So he's only chayav because of the new food, so it's still considered to be an optional eating at that point.
Is it to finish the remaining water, for example?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
You said before, I think you talked about that, because we're still because someone's still fighting, it's still like we have a part of their field, you know? So has anyone ever been really fulfilled with some Kiddush if not ever you did it?
Well, you're right. I mean, obviously, my absolute obligation I fulfill as soon as I make Kiddush. But you're right, in a sense. This is how a Yid should think about their achrayas to Klal Yisrael. If there's one Yid in the world who hasn't heard Kiddush, there is something incomplete in my mitzvah. Right? So that guy in Antarctica, or whatever it would be, that's the achrayas, meaning we don't look at it that way. And maybe that's a chaval, we don't look at it that way. And sometimes people have the attitude. Even the notion of kiruv, I'll give you a little history about this. Okay, whether you do kiruv or don't do kiruv, but I think everybody in theory at least knows it's important. Okay, maybe you don't do it, but even someone who's not Isaac in any type of kiruv will in theory say it's a good thing to be makarev people. But that wasn't always the case. If you go back 50, 60 years ago, there were many people who had the idea that the Jews who are not religious are hopeless. They'll never come back. So we need to focus on religious Jews and build our communities and make them very strong. And we simply, it's sad, but we simply can't give thought to those other people because they're never really going to change. That's why in the history of Or Sameach, when Rav Weinbach, Zechrono Livracha, and Rabbi Schiller, should be well, when they, plus some other people, founded, the yeshiva of Or Sameach. So there were people who told him, "What are you wasting your time? You know, you're going to get people from college campuses who are not religious, who never had any exposure to anything, and now they're 20 or 21, and you're going to bring them to Yerushalayim to learn in a yeshiva." And many people thought this was a crazy idea. Now it's like so pashut, you know, this is what so many places do. But it was a crazy idea. So the notion that we should just care about ourselves and not think about others was actually a commonplace in Klal Yisrael. But you see what the mistake is. Besides the fact that it's a lack of concern for other people, which in itself is a chisaron, it ignores the fact that when there's part of Klal Yisrael that's not keeping the Torah, even from a selfish perspective, my kiyum of the Torah is not complete. Because Kol Yisrael Areivin Zelazah. So if you didn't hear Kiddush, there's a chisaron in my Kiddush. Right? So that's the imperative of kiruv v'chaikim. Kiruv v'chaikim is not only altruistic, it's also selfish. Meaning to say, you need kiruv v'chaikim for yourself. By the way, as a little aside, I'll tell you a very sharp little word from Lubavitcher Rebbe. I like it. I said the word kiruv v'chaikim, or the phrase, probably 10 times in the past minute, but every time I say it, I now become self-conscious, because Lubavitcher Rebbe didn't like the phrase kiruv v'chaikim, because he said kiruv v'chaikim means take people who are far from Hashem and bring them close. That implies the Jew is far and you're bringing him close. He says no Jew is far from Hashem. Every Jew is close to Hashem. Elamai, not every Jew knows it yet. Not every Jew understands it yet. So you're not taking a person who's far from Hashem and bringing him close to Hashem. You're taking a person who's already near to Hashem, and you're trying to have him understand how near he is to Hashem. That's actually a beautiful. I mean, everyone says kiruv v'chaikim, so probably even in Chabad they probably say it, but it's a machshava. But then the Rebbe turned the knife the other way. He said, and besides, he said, who knows who's closer than you? Who knows if he's closer than you? That's kind of it. In other words, im tim solaymar. There's such a thing as rachak. Maybe you're the rachak and he's the karaf, right? How do you know? Okay. So whenever I say, ever since then, I've become a little, nervous. Whenever I say kiruv v'chaikim, oh no, I shouldn't say it, but whatever. Dibra Torah kolashim b'nei adam. So this is a convention, just like Gemara pronunciation. All of us pronounce the words in the Gemara incorrectly because Aramaic has a grammar. We don't learn Aramaic grammar. We don't really know it. But even things like b'mai kamiflagi, what are they? So technically, it's by my kamafalgi. In other words, if you actually went through the Aramaic, half of our pronunciations are totally wrong. But these are pronunciations that have been done for hundreds of years. Right? The way we read Gemara is already a Messiah in Klal Yisrael. So a professor of Aramaic at YU, who was a Talmud Chacham, he's not alive anymore, he would tell his students, know the right way to say it, but then say it like everybody else. So you should know, b'mai kamafalgi is what you say, but you say by kamiflagi because that's what we say. Even Tanu Rabbanan is actually Tanu Rabbanan. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi. Really, it's Ribi. Ribi is the correct pronunciation. But, you're going to do that. They're going to think you're crazy. So, in a sense, it became almost a makubal in the Messiah of Klal Yisrael that you read Gemara words a certain way, even though it's not. So, I'm going to use that lumdus and allow myself to say kiruv v'chaikim, even though I know that, I really shouldn't say it. Yeah.
Can one be Motzei a deaf individual for Kiddush?
A deaf individual? So that's a very good question. So remember, in order to be Motzei a person, he has to be shomeya. He has to hear it, and then it's as if he said it. So it all depends on how deaf is deaf, right? There is a deaf where a person can make out the sound. There is deaf which can be enhanced by hearing aids. And then if chas v'shalom, Rahman al-Itzlan, there is total deafness, then he could not be Motzei. And lip reading, if that's what you're asking, is not shomea ka'ina. No. It's an interesting question. Sign language is of course, a language of the deaf. It's a very expressive language, but it's not Shemea Ka'ina. So basically, the advice I would give to the deaf person is to, move his lips in accordance with the lip reading that he has, and then he doesn't have to be audible for Kiddush, and then he would be Yotzei the Kiddush by his Amira. Now I had in my show when I was a Rav in Maryland, so we had a man who was deaf. He was actually quite a Talmud Chacham, a Mechaber of Svarim, a big Talmud Chacham. So he knew halacha very, very well, but he was deaf. But he had powerful hearing aids. But I still remember every Rosh Hashanah, because he felt that you're not Yitzchak Shayfer through hearing aids because it's artificial hearing. Because what's happening is the sound waves are converted to electrical impulses, and then they're reconstituted. So you're not hearing the shofar. You're hearing a reconstitution of it. So he would take off his hearing aids during Tekiyah Shofar, and he would go right up to the Baal Tokeya, and he would be able to make it out. He did not want to be somech on hearing aids for Tekiyah Shofars. And so some people are very machmer on that. Yeah.
If we use that svara, how could you ever be Yoetze with hearing aids? It's not really hearing. I'm saying, just because it was a deraisa, it was extra strict, or would we say we use that svara always?
You talk about by hearing aid.
If it's not really hearing, it's
Yeah. So, well, you're right. The truth of the matter is there would be a makam to be machmer for every mitzvah. Take off your hearing aid, but we're more machmer on doraisas. So things that are drabanan like kriyas haTorah, unless it's parsha sachar. So on drabanans we could be mekel. On things that are doraisa, lav dafka shofar. Parsha sachar would be an example. We would be machmer on it. Yeah.
so also like Rosh Hashanah, it wouldn't be Motzei to like touch your hearing aids as well.
Yeah, so the question is, hearing aid may be muksa, but you may be permitted to move it in order to be able to do a mitzvah. So in order for me to hear shofar, I would be able to. Now, there's a whole shaila, by the way, just going very far afield. The question was raised the following. This was a big problem in America in the 1940s, 50s. Maybe you even experienced this growing up if you went to modern Orthodox shuls, and that is the issue of microphones on Shabbos. Have you ever been in a conservative reform? Obviously, you have no problem. But I'm talking about Orthodox shuls. In the 1950s, 40s, 50s, many Orthodox shuls in America actually had microphones because they felt that people wouldn't hear them otherwise. And they considered it to be mutter. They said, as long as the microphone is turned on before Shabbos, what malacha are you doing by speaking into a microphone? Baltimore had a number of Orthodox synagogues that had microphones on Shabbos. But the eventual psak that was followed by most gedolim was that speaking into a microphone is usher, even if it's turned on before Shabbos, because your sound waves are causing electronic circuits to close and the like, and therefore you are kind of generating electric current by your speaking. So the normal halachic consensus is that we don't speak into microphones on Shabbos. There are some holdovers, by the way. There are some exceptions. Nominally Orthodox synagogues that still have microphones, but derech klal not. So the question is this: if you go with the psak halacha that you're not allowed to speak into a microphone on Shabbos, then how can people wear hearing aids on Shabbos? Because a hearing aid is fundamentally a miniature microphone that's in a person's ear. So I speak to somebody with a hearing aid, so my sound waves go into the hearing aid and they magnify it and convert it into like. So l'chaira, if you were to be consistent and very, very literal, it would be prohibited not so much to wear a hearing aid, but it would be prohibited to speak to somebody with a hearing aid because you're speaking into a microphone and the like. So L'maisa, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said a very interesting thing. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said that it's impossible that a hearing aid would be usher because it's not shayach that Hashem's Torah would compel a deaf person to suffer in loneliness and silence on a joyous day of Shabbos. Now, this is so interesting. In other words, he then developed svaras, but it's interesting that before he developed the heterim, there was kind of an instinctual feeling that this is not shaykh. That itself is a massively interesting idea, that a gadol can sometimes see an overall hashkafa, that it can't be that way. And then he goes and looks for the reasons. See, we normally don't look at halacha that way. We would normally look at halacha, that we would tend to define it not as a preconceived notion, that, I don't know, let me look into this, and I start off, not knowing. Here you see the other way, that a gadol sometimes has a chush, a sense of what the halacha has to be, and then goes and tries to develop the svaras. So Lamaisa Rav Shlomo Zalman did matter that. Okay, again, we've gone far afield, but as I say, just remember all of this is connected to the central idea of Kol Yisrael, HaRav and Zelazah, that we learn from Achan. So I think tomorrow I'll give you one more shir on Arvis, and then we'll go back to the Psukim in Yoshua itself.
Thank you for listening to this Awesome Ech production. To find out more and to partner in our mission, please visit ohr.edu.